to Esther 414 Ministries. This is Tracy. Hey, thanks a lot for watching the videos. I appreciate you guys. Today I have some encouraging words for you. So hang in there and listen to it. We're going to be in 1 Chronicles chapter 4 verse 10, okay? And it reads like this. It says, "And Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, Oh, that you would bless me indeed, that you would enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me, that you would keep me from evil, that I may not cause pain." And then God granted him what he requested. What about this earth-shattering prayer? What is it? And God granted him his request? So when Jabez is asking for God's favor, for his blessings in his life, he's asking for something that's deep within his heart, that isn't written there, that we don't know about, what Jabez really wanted. But there are things in our lives that mean something to us, where we would love the Lord to bless us in our lives, and it's different for each one of us, whether it's someone who's young, who really would love to meet the one, you know, Mr. Wonderful. Or maybe there's someone else that's going along and they lost their job. I mean, it blindsided them, and now they're having to make a career change, and they don't know which direction to go, and they're asking, Lord, please bless me, please show me the way. Or maybe they've had a traumatic event occur in their lives, and they need the Lord to bless them and to help them and to move them through that. Some of you are needing God to answer your request and bring healing into your life, whether it's spiritual or physical or emotional or mental, whatever type of healing it might be, that only God can bring that into your life and bless you indeed. See, for each person, it's different within their lives, but God knows what's deep within your hearts. Sometimes we can't even utter these things, but God absolutely knows what we're pondering in our hearts, and he's saying, I will bless you indeed. First thing that Jabez is asking for, he's asking for God's favor, for his blessing. And honestly, if you take that, oh, that you would bless me indeed, really, that's kind of all-encompassing. Don't we want God's blessing, God's favor in our lives? I mean, in all things, not just in one little compartmented area. We want it all over our life, to have God's blessing and God's favor. Oh my goodness, we can't even fathom that. We can't even put that together, because that would be just so huge. That would be the greatest thing right there. But he doesn't stop there. Jabez goes on. He asks God to enlarge his territory. And God absolutely knew what that meant in his life too. And see, we don't know how God answered that request, and we don't know what Jabez meant by that request. But if you and I were to pray that request to the Lord and say, Lord, enlarge my territory. See, to one person it could simply mean, Lord, I want you to expand my business. To another person it could mean, Lord, I want you to grant me a house, my own house, with some land on it. To another person it could simply mean that you would enlarge my family. I've been praying for a child and I haven't had one. Lord, please bless me indeed and enlarge my territory. See, no matter what you are requesting of God, he knows your heart, whether you verbalize it or not. And God is such a great and awesome and most powerful God. He is able to grant those requests as he sees fit. See, guys, in Psalm 37:4 it says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. But the prerequisite there is delighting yourself in the Lord. That is, he is your all in all. You're taking time in your life to be with him, to develop a relationship, to sit down in the morning, to pray, to study his word, and to ask him to speak to your heart. And then what does he do? He gives you the desires of your heart. Now, guys, I want you to get this and to see this. There's a transition here in Jabez's prayer. He says that your hand would be with me and that you would keep me from evil. Now, it seems kind of bizarre, but when you look deep into it, you will see he wants God's hand to be with him. When he's asked for all these wonderful things, he knows if God's hand is not with him, Jabez will do evil, or evil will come upon him. He wants God's favor, God's hand to be there, to protect him, to go before him, to show him how to enjoy the things that God is giving him, and not to turn his back on God because now I'm going to worship all these things that God gave me instead of worshiping the God who gave it to me. Let me give you an example of how when God grants our requests, how he blesses us with those things in our heart, and then we start worshiping that thing more so than the God who gave it to us. See, I can't tell you of how many times I've seen this, maybe in my own life or other people's lives, and I can think of one example specifically, okay, where someone was praying and asking God to bless their business, to help them, to move them forward, and he did. And at first they started praising him, and the business started flourishing, and then all of a sudden they stopped spending time with God, and they stopped going to some services at the church, and they were so involved in church, and they were there every time the doors were open, and then you start seeing them less and less and less, and then all of a sudden you'd be lucky to see them once a month, okay? What ends up happening, you ask? Well, God, he is so good, and he's patient, and he's long-suffering, and he's merciful and gracious. God allowed this business to flourish, and this person made a lot of money. I mean, they were making money hand over fist, and their business was flourishing, and they were doing great, but God kept on getting further and further and further back on the burner. In fact, he got taken off the stove, okay? And then what happened? Well, after God's long-suffering and patience ended, we watched this person's business fall apart and their whole life fall apart. Okay, guys, I want you to watch what happened in this woman's life within a matter of 2 weeks. Very short amount of time, okay? First of all, this flourishing business that she had, that she was making so much money in it, something happened and she lost her business completely. Then, her marriage, it just completely fell apart, and she lost her husband, her home, her belongings, everything. She had to move out. She lost her entire family. And then if that is not enough, she goes to the doctor and finds out she has something terribly wrong with her health. Why did all this happen? Because she made the blessing more important than the blesser, who is God Almighty. See, what she did is she took the blessing that God had given her and then made it a curse. And how did she do that? Because God's hand was no longer upon it. Do you see how important that little point is in Jabez's prayer, where he said that your hand would be with me, that you would keep me from evil. Even when we look in the book of Deuteronomy, there's several different places where this talks about it, especially in one part where he says, and when I prosper you and you go into that land that I'm giving you, don't you think that you did it in your own strength and then forget me and leave me behind. You go to Deuteronomy 28, first 14 verses are talking about God wanting to overwhelm you and overtake you with his blessings and how he's going to do this. But then in the 15th verse, it starts and he says, but if you forget me, this is what's going to happen. And he goes on and on and on about all these terrible curses that you're going to bring upon yourself because you forgot the Lord. See, we don't want to bring that type of evil upon ourselves, right? We want to remember God. We want to have God's hand and favor with us. Oh, that you would bless me indeed. Jabez did understand that. He said, oh, Lord, that your hand would be with me and you would keep me from my evil desires. That you would keep me focused on you, Lord. Okay, guys, and here's the question really, is how did Jabez get that request answered by God? Because we absolutely know that not all prayer requests like that one gets answered. I mean, people can name it and claim it all they want and think that God's going to do this, but he doesn't necessarily have to answer it. Let me tell you how Jabez got that answer. We have to go back to verse 9 where it says, and Jabez was more honorable than his brethren. And what does that mean, honorable? Well, integrity, a man of integrity, of morals, a person who was upright, who was walking with the Lord, that he brought down the favor of God, that he got God to notice him, that he had the Lord answer such a huge prayer request, and God granted him his desires. See, when it says that Jabez was more honorable than his brethren, he's talking about Jabez was living in righteousness, that he could go boldly to the throne of God and present this request towards the Lord, knowing those things in his heart, and that knowing that the Lord knows what they are, and leaving it up to God whether or not he's going to answer it, and leaving it up to God how he's going to answer it. See, a lot of times we've kind of decided in our own life how we would like God to bless us indeed and enlarge our territory, but only God knows the perfect way to bless us indeed and enlarge our territory. And let's take it back to us again. Are you more honorable than your brethren or sisterin, however it might be, that the Lord could look down upon you and say, put your name in the blank. Blank is living an honorable life, and they're righteous, and I want to grant the desires of their heart. Don't we want the Lord to say that to us? Don't we want the Lord to grant our desires and know that he will keep us from evil, that his hand will be with us, and he will bless that blessing, and we will praise and honor God so much more, and we'll just say, oh, thank you, Lord, and praise and glory and honor go to you, because I know it came from you, Lord. No blessing like this can come from man. It can only come from God. The Bible tells us that a man can receive nothing unless it's been given to him from heaven. Guys, I want to encourage you to live a life of righteousness and to come to God and ask boldly and realize he is the all-powerful God, and he can grant that request if it's in your best interest. Guys, I hope this encouraged you and helped you and lifted you up. This has been Tracy from Esther 414 Ministries.